Welcome, guys, to the Backyard Barn Insect Podcast. How y'all doing?
It's about the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Please do not say that.
It's cricket time, man.
It's about the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
I think it's cool because this is your niche, right? You have assigned yourself to be not necessarily the bookkeeper, but somehow the bookkeeper, right? And this is for me. I always think that there are people who hold the keys to history, people who keep the secrets, and then the people who let the secrets out. Right. What exactly are we? Are we the whistleblowers, or are we the ones that'll try or are trying to continue something that I feel like is lost? I don't think a lot of people these days even try to understand a lot of things anymore. I think it's more wake up, go to work, chill. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think it's probably a moral response. We recognize that there was some good to be had in things that were niche or like took time to figure out. Right. I recognize that the written word, for me, had some kind of special power, say, to speak to people in a way that more contemporary communication doesn't really lend itself to, right? So we can watch all the videos, we can listen to all the music or podcasts or whatever it is, talking in person, but for me, there was something about the written word that I really liked. I don't know if I'm some special whistleblower. I just know I like to do it.
Now, when I say whistleblower, I'm talking in a sense of like sounding the alarm
for people to start doing
waking
this
up
because it's being lost.
Right. Like waking up to the fact that you have 3 typewriters. I used to have a typewriter, but I lost it when my basement flooded. I never got one again. I don't have space to, but I would like to have one.
Yeah.
How many people do you know have typewriters, right?
None.
Right. Now, that is you in history, holding on to it and revering it. History in the 21st century is gone. So much shit happens now. We don't have time for history. Like, history is yesterday.
Right.
You know? And last time we talked, we said, I'm done talking politics.
Right.
I'm done. And then what happens?
We talked about it.
A fucking governor.
Yep.
There was a plot to kidnap a governor, hold her against her will, and do what?
Yeah, kidnap her from her vacation home and try her for treason.
Right, like they have the power to do this.
They almost kidnapped the Virginia governor, or that was in their list of things to do. Right.
How does someone have time to do that? How much time do you have to put into that?
A lot of time.
Right? And I looked at the list, it was like 14 of them.
Yep.
And like that's what they said, you know, fuck it. We're the, I can't even remember the name, whatever militia, and we're going to do this.
Well, the really fucked up point here is if you really care about something, you're going to invest time in it.
That's sad.
And for those 14 men, those 14 white men, they thought that was a good idea how to spend their time. I, on the other hand, thought, writing a poem might instead be worth my time for a means of speaking against white supremacy in this country and the political ills we have. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the funny part. It's like we're having a podcast and this dude's out there getting ARs, plotting to steal governors and shit and kill people. Right. It's nuts.
Again, I don't know where they get the time from because I don't have time to fix up this fucking house. So it's like
I don't have time to.
You're plotting to overthrow the government.
I don't have time to get gas in the morning when I should have got it the night before.
Exactly. I'll be late to work rolling out of bed to get to my fucking computer.
Hey, hatred is a really strong motivator. I just wondered if they could love something as much as they hated her or the Democratic Party. Hey,
you have to wonder if it's like a special kind of sickness because you have to. How many people do you know? How many people can you imagine that would do what these 14 men? I think you can say a lot, right? Because
you want a real answer or you want a safe answer.
So you're going to tell me that all the potentials are on 4chan. And that they're just waiting for their moment to shine.
Right. All right. So I just replied to a post earlier that said that what happened was just the first of many, and how we are now officially at war. That was the first, let's say, shot, right? That was one of the first, some people would say one of the first shots at a civil war. We've always been at civil war, in my mind. There's never been a time we have been at peace 100%. We live so separated in different states that news doesn't travel. And these instances of racism, instances of hatred, instances of homeland terrorism happens all the time. It's just happening so much. And everywhere you don't know where to look.
Does it make you not want to live here anymore?
That's a good question. I'm sure a lot of people thought about that. And I would say, yes, of course, I don't want to live here. But at the same time, I know for a fact that I deserve to live here more than a lot of people do.
Right.
I just went through this, actually. I recently asked to do more research. I asked my mother for more information on her side of the family, dating back to, I don't know, great grandfather, and on my father's side as well. And I was thinking about when the documentation started was about 150 years ago.
Wow.
But that doesn't mean that was when it actually started.
Right.
So, yes, as 150 years, I already looked it up. So 100 years is about roughly 4 generations. And in 100 years, 4 generations could be alive all at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that is, so it goes like this. It goes grandparents, then the parents, then their children, then the grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So that's 4 generations at one time. So 150 years is 6 generations. Okay. How many people can say that they can track 6 generations back to living in America?
Right.
So, no, I'm not fucking leaving.
It's true.
I have my papers. You can, there's a family tree right on my family's website that you can see 6 generations back.
Wow.
So why would I leave? you know? And to think that that's still a thought just shows how unsafe somebody must feel. Mm-hmm. That they would leave a place that they lived for documented 6 generations.
Sure.
Now to go somewhere else that what is the DNA test ancestry says you're from, you know?
Right, but what exactly is keeping you here? I mean, I understand the ancestry runs deep here.
Yes.
Right? But now you are you here now. And you can make any decision you want. And not to say you can't have a home here.
Right.
But I think, as we talked about this before, is this idea of being a global citizen in a way, and maybe, you know, one day having the luxury of multiple residences in multiple countries. Would you ever consider something like that? I'm not saying like you just need to get up and leave and not come back.
I don't think I would ever become an expat.
Okay.
But I could definitely see having a different home somewhere else as just vacation, but not the main location where I will be living the rest of my life. I think of like, and I've been watching this show. It's called Lovecraft Country. I want you to start watching it. And the protagonist of the story, he keeps saying this thing, and it really hit me hard last episode. He said, "It's my birthright."
Yeah.
And he's a black man. And one of the other characters said, which is a blonde white lady, she said, "That doesn't work when you say it because your skin color doesn't support it." And I was floored. I said, shit, she's right. I've never heard a black man say it's my birthright. And then what that entails and what that means.
Right.
And to think like, might be putting people into some game, but are African Americans technically a group of people in America? Are they a recognized group of people?
Are they a recognized group of people?
Yes.
I want to say yes, but I feel like, okay.
Do you think United Nations has a representative from African Americans in the UN panel?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably not.
So, not recognized.
Okay.
In your own country. But then you have these white men that think that they have the power and the means to enact a civil war. It's ironic. Because what are they doing? What do they think we want a war? Right.
It's difficult because for me, how many generations does mine go back? Like 3?
3. That's it. 3.
So in my mind, what's keeping me here?
Nothing.
Right?
I know what's keeping you here, but I don't want to say it.
All right. What?
Okay. When did your parents get here? Or your grandparents get here?
My grandparents got here probably in 1940s.
Okay. I'd probably say it's safe to say that your grandparents started a company, right? Probably got loans that a black family couldn't have gotten in the 1940s. They probably could have lived in a neighborhood that our ancestors couldn't have lived in.
Correct.
Even though we've been here since the beginning.
Right.
So why would you leave if you can get that? Why would you leave if you can start a company and flourish when an entire town was burned down in the 1920s that did the same thing, but they were all black? So you felt safe here. You left. You literally left your country, came here of your own free will. That's it. You wanted to come here.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Well, I think some people wanted to come here. I think some people
had to
because they.
But at the same time, they weren't shackled at the bottom of a boat.
Absolutely not.
So, yes.
I guess what I'm trying to. So I don't know what happened on my mother's side, interestingly.
Why?
I don't know. It's never really...
You never thought to ask?
No.
Why not?
This is not all that important to me.
You know what's ironic? It's not important. You say it's not important. So does that mean that your heritage isn't important? Because you're Italian, and we all know you're Italian. And you went to Sicily. How does that work?
Because in some way, and don't misunderstand me, because I think some people also feel this way. There's like that side of the family that they don't really identify with.
Yeah, we all have that. I agree.
Right? And so it's almost like I don't really care to uncover it because I may not like what I find. Who knows? Or maybe I will like what I find. Who knows? Right? But I just know that my grandparents on my father's side are both alive. And so therefore it's a verbal history. And so naturally, I'm Italian. They're from Sicily and Rome. Okay, cool. It works for me.
How do you feel about having a dual citizenship in America, but you only have an American passport?
A dual citizenship?
Like, you're Italian.
Yeah.
You say you're Italian proudly. But you're not from Italy. You're American.
Right.
So, what is that? And I've always thought that was ironic. You always hear Italian American, German American, right? Japanese American,
African American,
American. But we've got pride. You've got pride from your heritage, right?
Columbus. Oh, I said it.
You fucked up. You fucked up because it's not a joke. Now we're about to fight.
I know.
Yeah. So you have heritage, and you find pride, and you find your source of energy from your heritage. Would you say? Would you agree?
To some extent.
Okay. Now, to some extent, yes, but also that is also your identity, correct?
To some extent.
Okay. So, what is actually American? Ask yourself, what does an American look like? Bud Light, Chevy pickup truck?
You know what's interesting?
Marlboro cigarettes?
Yeah, because my girlfriend is from Nigeria, and so she's seeing a lot of flags, a lot of American flags. My God, you can't go around without seeing so many fucking flags.
It's ironic to me, but
in its own right, ironic. So there's that, and then there's, she's not really been to a whole lot of outings with, not that I would partake in it, like Bud Light, MAGA hat wearing attendance,
But, all right, so what I'm asking is what in your mind does an American look like? That's what I'm asking.
To me.
To you, right? Because what's more American than a fucking lifted Jeep with no doors and a damn lift jack in the back, right? With whatever state flag or American flag or...
It's not American to me.
Why is that not American?
Because to me, that's a twisted version of who we are. I don't agree with it. That is American.
Right.
Or makes that American.
Is that like the theatrical American?
Oh, yeah.
Like I always thought, and I say this with the most humble and deepest apologies if I hurt anybody's feelings, but we have so many American flags because veterans need to walk around to understand that they're at home.
Yeah.
Right?
That's tough. Wow. Ooh, man. That's a tough one. Wow.
That's what I say to myself. That's the whole reason why Colin Kaepernick kneeling hurt so many people, because how many people have died for that flag. But then when you ask yourself, what does an American look like? That's a what is it called when you ask a question that you're asking the wrong question? Mm-hmm. Is it called a conundrum, or
you're confused?
You're asking a question that you're asking a question that doesn't have an answer, right?
Or might have multiple answers.
Like, what does America look like? Me. American looks like you.
Right.
American looks like the lady next door. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what Americans look like. We all look different. Mm-hmm. But why do I keep seeing the same American make America great again look? Do you understand what I mean? Like, it's like, how and when did we come so far from being a diverse melting pot to the silent majority?
Because it's the last hoo-ha of the good times in their mind. I mean, there are things that make countries the country they are, like the Jeep, Bud Light,
Bush.
Right?
Have you ever drank Bush before?
Nope.
Okay, well,
God bless you.
You're not American if you ever drank Bush.
I'm happy not to be.
You know, so ironic. I recently looked up the oldest businesses, and I sent this to you, in America, and it was Pabst. Pabst is the oldest brewery in the United States, and I've never had it.
Yuengling's also pretty old, but that's started by Germans.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about that one. Yikes. Because
it's actually one of my favorite beers.
Well, did you also know that a lot of Mexican beers have a lot of German lineage?
Oh.
Because guess what? Germans also were in South America. So a lot of melding, a lot of melting around the world. But then when we talk about pride and who you are, it just like vanishes.
You took German in college.
Yeah.
You learn about German culture?
You learn a lot of their culture through their language, but I would say this. My original goal was I wanted to be an automotive engineer. I wanted to learn German so that I could go to Germany and work on German cars and do whatever. And also possibly be a race engineer and design and manufacture and race cars in Europe, that's like the creme de la creme when it comes to racing. I soon found out that I actually don't like German cars because I just started to work on them as a mechanic and I fucking hated it. And then there was like this shift where I go, why are German Mercedes and Audi seen as luxury vehicles? What about it? Why? Because a lot of the motherfuckers that drive in America are German or some type of European. So it's like a status symbol.
Right.
Right? It's weird. Just like you would say any Asian American, they're majority going to drive a Japanese or most likely a Japanese or Asian type vehicle.
All right.
Why is that?
Let me reel you back in because I'm
Whoa, what?
I asked you why you took German in college.
I told you.
Well, yes, you just told me. I'm trying to connect here. What did you learn that is synonymous with American culture, with German culture?
Synonymous. Beer.
You know, that like full breakfast spread that we're also accustomed to?
Yeah, that heavy
German.
Deep American.
German.
Let's think.
The work ethic? Prussian, right?
No, fuck Russian. Russian all day.
Prussian.
Russian.
Prussia.
Russian.
You know about Prussia?
King of Prussia, yes, I've heard of him.
We have this very Protestant ethic. in the United States, everything has to be done. The idea of a lecture hall, German or Prussian.
That's scary. So are we just a bunch of fucking Germans?
Kinda.
I mean, because I just found out a lot of slave owners were Germans, so that's not ironic to me
A
anymore.
lot of Nazis are hiding in South America and Central America.
Yeah, and then guess what? They started making fucking beers.
Yep.
With goddamn South American hops.
Imagine that.
Blows your fucking mind. My favorite beer, Pacifico, runs back its lineage to a German fucking brewery. Shit is sick. So, what is American?
That's the question.
Everywhere. Everybody, right?
But I see, I'm going to go back to this. So, you have 6 generations.
6 documented.
6 documented generations.
Yes.
What establishes? I don't want to come off as insensitive.
Just say it.
Yeah, but what requires you to stay here just simply because your ancestors were here?
I think of it like this. That has to do with African spirituality.
Okay.
If you think that for 1 minute that the land that you walk on and your ancestors walk on is not holy, then you're mistaken. The soil that your ancestors once tilled for free, died in for free, that is sacred. I went to Whitney Plantation in Louisiana. I believe it was, I would say 3 or 4 years ago. And it was surreal to see not even a big plantation, rather small. The big house wasn't that big, wasn't that grand, but at that time I could see how important it could seem. To see this land that was 50 acres and to understand that for generations, my ancestors could have been out there. Why would you ever think that you could leave such a place?
So it's more spiritual.
Everything is spiritual. Why do we do the things we do? Why do we eat the foods we eat? Why do we dress the way we dress? People have disconnected it. But at the same time, and this is the thing, it's not religious. We all know what organized religion looks like. But spirituality is something totally different. So when you say woo-woo, that's what I think about is spiritual. And it's funny because
woo-woo is not spiritual.
Listen, the way that I've understood when you said woo-woo was airy. Something that you can't necessarily grasp and nothing really confined to what you really pertaining to say. You said it's confusing. Now, this is why I love it, because if I say a word to you that doesn't mean what it means, that would confuse you.
Yeah.
But to me, I would understand it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Because you came up with it.
Because I understand that there's always, like I say, 2 sides to a coin. So I understand that something has meaning, but I also understand that that meaning has consequences. Like we talk about everything around us, consequences. This land that we're on, who owned it first? Consequences.
Right. Yeah. You
said his name, and we gonna talk about it. That motherfucker Columbus. Consequences, right?
It's huge.
So yeah. How and this is the thing I remember as a child, my father always say this: how in the hell can you discover a place that people already lived? Just imagine what that was like then. To think that you discovered something and you named a group of people. That's what.
It's an interesting thing, though. This was on, I don't know if you watched The Daily Show's rendition on.
No, I did not.
And
I was waiting for him to talk about the whole governor about to get kidnapped. Yeah. I can't wait for that.
There's this interesting thing with Italian Americans with Columbus, and this is to address that, me being Italian and Columbus.
Oh, wait, was Christopher Columbus Italian?
Supposedly.
He might have found that one too.
Yeah.
So
he in like 1890s. This is like between 1890 and 1920 when Italians first started coming over here. There was that brief history in American culture, American history, where Americans needed one other group to hate, and Italians coming over here were also treated, let's say, badly, and not equal access to housing, beatings, employment was low, working in factories, whatever. According to The Daily Show, and I'm not saying that it's wrong.
Did he trigger you?
No.
Oh, actually, watch it.
I didn't know about it.
Okay.
During those times when Italians were looking for, I guess, something to ease their struggle, I guess, they identified with Columbus. Oh. So I don't know. I understand why Italian Americans are so strong for keeping Columbus now, right? That's not to ignore what Columbus did, but we have to understand that they misguidedly latched themselves onto a figure who did such horrible atrocities. They don't understand that because they were here and they were just like, Columbus, like, oh, he's Italian, he found America, cool. And so that doesn't make them right. But what it does not allow them is the process to understand. And so and I agree with this, I agree, like, fuck Columbus and him coming here and calling people Indians when he thought he was in India. He clearly was not in India, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't excuse Columbus from what he did, but we need to know that there's a bigger scope of the story. Now, I don't really agree with. I mean, now people are for Columbus. They simply need to understand and let go of that shit. But at a particular juncture in time, that mistakenly gave Italian Americans hope for that brief period of history. So that's the one thing that I am okay with then, but now that we know and it's very public, they let that shit go. It's not an Italian American hero. I mean, you put a statue up of Frank Sinatra, like, I don't really give a fuck. But
how many people like to be told that they're wrong, though?
Well, that's the whole point of this podcast.
Shit happens, bro. Like, it sucks. Yeah, it does suck. But then once you read about the shit he did, I think
genocide.
I think the worst thing that he did was, I read about how he knew about like some solstice or equinox that was happening, and how he needed to go back home, and he didn't have any more reserves. So he talked to, I guess, whatever kingdom that he was at. I don't say tribe. I hate the word. Whatever kingdom that he was visiting at the time, and he said that we need all of your stockpiles that you need to get through the winter.
Wow.
And he had previous knowledge there was going to be an eclipse in a week, and he told them that if they didn't give him their food, he would block the sun. And guess what happened?
That'll do it.
And he goes his merry way back to Europe, and Lord knows what happens to that kingdom.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Atrocious.
Like, but hey.
So, and I think, and this is the problem that I have with how we approach talking to. It's different when we talk amongst each other. We get it. How do we approach people that they were raised on it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like,
well, I have the assumption that if you were raised on it and you heard me say the words Christopher Columbus in my mouth, you probably already turned off the podcast.
right.
But I mean, for me, it has to do with, like we talked about earlier, the heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a shameful heritage that you don't want to ever think about.
Well, America certainly has its share of shame, right?
Well, I mean,
But that just doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it, right?
well, the whole point is, okay, so what part of your heritage are you too ashamed to look back to?
I don't even know if it's one that I'm ashamed of. It's not, I'm Italian, and that's what I identify with. And my mother's side is Italian, but it's like more Italian American, if that makes any sense. They're more American than they are Italian. And so
that's not fashionable.
It's not like it's not fashionable. It's just like, again, it's very easy for me to just go over to my grandparents' house and be like, oh, that's kind of okay. Also on my mother's side, there was more explicit forms of racism than at the time I cared to admit. And one of them, I think we've talked about this, there are all these figurines of black people with very embellished features. There was always this one that I remember in particular of this like alligator biting
a baby.
Was it? Yeah, it might have been a baby, but also just like biting a man on his ass, or just like,
Yep, and it's showing his butt and all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's America, bro.
Yeah. And so, I could explore that, but in my mind, like, that's a good enough answer for me. Like, yeah, I know we have relatives in Ohio. I think a lot of them have passed, but we may still have some. To what extent do I owe myself to know that?
Okay.
I could look into it. I think it's a matter of like, how much do I care to look into it?
Now, this is what I'm thinking. What would benefit you from looking?
That's the thing. Like, I don't know what I mean. But that's with anything, though. You look into something, you try to uncover something. You never know what you're gonna find.
Mm-hmm.
It's archaeology. I mean, I don't fucking know. It's
yeah. I think it's just people want to leave the past in the past.
Right.
That's it. And maybe for me, like, I can't, because it's a past that wasn't given its proper due. That's all. So yeah, I'm gonna be a historian. There you go.
Do you think that if you were able to track your ancestry back to Africa, A, what would that mean for you? And two, if you went to that area, I mean, would you go to that area? I'm like, I can't. To ask you what you would feel like when you went, if you went there, it's kind
I
of
don't
a dumb
know.
question.
All right, so this is where we talked about earlier about the whole interracial issue between Africans and African Americans. I think I would like to do it. I have the sneaky suspicion that I won't be able to find it because I know that a lot of times that documentation wasn't really needed. Right. So there's a part of me that feels like that won't be possible. Also, don't trust DNA tests. It's
a whole lot with that, yeah.
Bunch of horse shit. Not saying that it won't give you the general area, but not like I can go and talk to my long lost, aunt or some shit. I don't think that'll be possible. But to go back to the land that I originated from, or my people originated from, and I know this sounds crazy, but it's like, I would do it, but there would be like an asterisk of, okay, now which one of you motherfuckers sold me into slavery? Like, I'd be looking around like, okay, all right, I understand, but now what are we going to do about it? Now, there's a lot of people now that are going back and they're staying and they love it. I follow multiple people on Instagram and YouTube that have returned back to the motherland.
Ghana has that one program.
Right. But let's say going back somewhere that you were taken from can be powerful in the sense of your feet have touched the soil that, like I said, spiritually you belong. But at the same time, I couldn't live there.
Right. Maybe, and I ask you that, but I think maybe it's not the appropriate time to ask you, because I think maybe you need to go and experience that. I don't know what that will be like for you. For me, under very different circumstances, obviously going back to Sicily.
Is it though?
No, it's very different circumstances.
I mean, I understand the whole captured and taken
historical thing, yeah.
But I'm talking about just returning. To.
It's different in the following way. It's really a matter of again, I do think that it shapes it. What happened for me. My grandmother lived in a cave during the bombing and had to survive. There was a lot of famine in Sicily, and so coming from there to here, by choice but also by necessity. So that's kind of the part I try to, and also my grandfather from Rome, fighting in the war, in World War II. Trying to get my head around that as well. But I think it's different. I don't know why it's different. It's not, it's different for me being me, right? And I didn't grow up there, but trying to connect with the past in that way, it's very difficult to do. I don't speak the language. Right. Some of the food is different, certainly different. Pizza's not even as good. Pizza's better here, by the way.
Lies.
I'm telling you. Pasta's better, but the pizza's blows.
That sounds ironic. Very ironic.
Right.
Just like going to France and getting French fries.
I don't know how it is all that different, but in some way I feel like it is because of the history.
Well, could you say it's because you know your history and I don't know mine?
In some way.
Yeah. I think for me, that's the that is the big divider. You probably can go back to the street, the block,
yeah,
that you grew up from. You know what I mean? That your family came from. Me, I just have to look at what is it, the second biggest continent in the world, and be like, somewhere,
right?
You know, so yeah, that's different.
I think that's a big distinguisher. So, and for me to ask you, you know, first of all, I do think you need to.
Oh no, I most likely will, but in my mind, it's reconnecting with something that it's like I can't explain it. I'm gonna have to think about this one. I would say it'd be more like going back to the place you belong. But what would that do for me and the person I am? That wouldn't change the fact that America still exists, and every other person that had to go through this can't do the same thing. So yeah, okay, the Great Migration can be a thing, but it shouldn't be. You know, I think that it's more important to fight for your birthright, if that makes sense.
I think this is a big disconnect we have right now, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around when you say you don't want to go anywhere else but here.
Yeah, what, I'm gonna just like wave the white flag and just leave the country?
But it's not waving the white flag though. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's the idea that you can start your next iteration, your ancestry going forward in a different place.
All right, so that's the whole point. And I talked specifically about this last night to a friend. What kept my ancestors alive? What was it? The yearning for freedom? That's it? Or the hope and faith that they would one day be free, be equal, and then be able to grow without any hindrances. So why would I give that up? Because I want to go back to Africa, but at the same time, this great country we live in, my ancestors died for it. You get me? That's why I say I'm not leaving. And I think that's for the indigenous people of America. That's it. Like, we're all American. But for some reason, why aren't you called Italian American? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm called African American because you can see my skin color, but that was the whole nuance that I was saying about, I'm pretty sure that your grandparents were given stuff, not saying that they didn't work their asses off,
right?
But at the same time, if he cut his hair a certain way or he start talking without an accent, he would just be seen as an American, right? So, yeah, I'm American, bro. That's it.
Are you against moving someplace and coming back?
Visiting. Not moving.
Why do you think that... We've talked about this before, and I think about this often. Simply because they're two men that I admire.
Yeah, and that's the ironic part.
Really?
Because I understand what they did and why they left.
James Baldwin and Dave Chappelle.
Yes, but there's other people that never left,
Yeah.
and they died. So, what do you think would happen if certain people got the ability to leave, reflect and then come back? We never know. The world never knows. But no, the fight is here, and the whole thing of summoning us up is it's funny because people think, and when I said this before, that this is like the beginning of a civil war. I just said now it just shows you who actually is your enemy. Because before, you didn't know. You get me? So that's it. You just see who they are now.
Right. Very present.
You get me? That's the only difference between what happened and before. All of this was already there. Militias have been around forever.
I think I'm gonna need some time really to I need to listen to what we've said again, because I hear what you're saying with regard to your ancestors and you being here and continuing on the fight.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I'm struggling to identify with the idea that you may be like, you know what? There are opportunities elsewhere, and whatever this. I'm certain there are people who don't feel this deep connection in the way that you do. Maybe.
With America?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, but I also can say that I was just looking, and there's a Facebook group for our not our ancestors, but our relatives. It's like 300 people on there.
Right.
I'm just leave 300 people that I don't know them.
Yeah, but you keep saying you're leaving, but like you're not going at it. Like you might go to a different country, but you're not abandoning them. Like that's what I keep hearing.
Right. So that's the whole thing of community that I am saying leaving, because I want to create a community.
Okay, now we're on to something here.
Right.
All right.
That is not like Black Wall Street, but better. Do you understand?
All right, say more.
I can't talk about it because once the enemy hears it, then they'll know how to stop it. But do you understand what I'm saying? Where you don't leave something when you can see the potential and you understand that there are other people like you out there who believe exactly like you or exactly what you believe.
Okay. Now I get it.
Because the woo-woo for me would be to find my ancestors in another country and move there and stay there. That's my woo-woo. That doesn't fix shit.
Right.
You know? That's my piece. But what... And I think this is the other part. Spiritually. Do you think yourself as a spiritual person?
Yes.
Okay. You said that with conviction, right?
Yeah.
When was the last time you said one of your deceased ancestors' names?
One of my deceased ancestors' names? I can't even think of the last time. If ever.
Why?
I don't really know who they are.
So time is forward and backwards.
Okay.
Spirituality should cross all planes.
Mm-hmm.
For me, not saying their names, I don't have my spirituality.
Okay.
Right? So, yeah. How, and this is, and I've always wanted to say this because this is how I saw and the damage of the transatlantic slave trade. And this is how I wanted to say it in the sense of how anybody could understand it, no matter what your race was. Imagine you living somewhere and then being taken. And you speak a language. This language contains the names of all of your ancestors that came before you, which you can see as gods and deities and spirits. And imagine coming to a country where when you say their name, you could get beaten to death. So you forget their name. You don't even know how to speak the language anymore. So you can't even talk to your gods anymore. Imagine that. Imagine not being able to say the names of your ancestors because you don't even know the language anymore. That's the ultimate sin of racism and slavery. That's the disconnect right there.
And that is because I don't even identify with my ancestors in that way.
You should.
And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Mm-hmm.
I should, but understand that the idea that I would be connected with them in that way is such a unusual thing to me.
To you, it is.
Right.
Yeah. But ask any black person, or I mean, not even black person, but ask any person from the continent of Africa if they believe in Jesus or not. They'll still talk to their deceased parents,
right,
deceased loved ones, and they will do it so quick. It's subconscious. It's just natural.
No, I have nothing like that. I was never raised on anything like that. I was never any inclination to think that. I don't know really where to begin with that, but certainly something to begin. I don't know, but I never really thought about it that way.
That's the difference for me between spirituality and religion. Because I talk about my mother here, a God-fearing woman that in her hardest times will pray better than anybody else, and then on the side call on her mother's name in the same prayer as if it's the same thing.
Wow.
And it's not an issue. Cricket time, bro.
That's something deep. No, I can't. Yeah, I can't connect with you in that way.
That's fine.
And that makes me kind of upset because I want to be able to, like, there are like things that, and this is the other thing that kind of bothers me about disconnecting in this way, because we always, like, we hear things and we want to have empathy, or like, not even empathy, but like to connect in that spiritual way. Like, I want to be able to like fully grasp the ancestral spirituality that you have. And simply because I have not even considered it until this point, like the fact that this came in the conversation, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, and it's been with me this entire time.
Yeah.
Like I remember saying this as a child. I was like, Ma, I see ghosts. She was like, okay. She was like, who do you see? And I was like, wait, you're not asking me like why. You're asking me who. And I'm like, oh shit. I don't know. Next time let me look. I was like, yo, it was this old ass man. He just laid in the bed with me. I don't know who he was. He was old and he was tall and he was skinny. She was like, oh, that was probably your great grandfather. I was like, I saw Granny, right? That really hit her. I was like, I saw Granny. She just stood at the end of my bed. I was like, I'm guessing she's protecting me.
You know what's interesting is my mother does. I don't know. This will this will take some time, because I don't know.
You don't have to know, right? And I think the reason why we're here is because you heard what I said, and it shook your jaw.
Yeah, I don't know what to fucking do right now.
Right.
I'm trying to think.
You don't have to.
No.
That's the whole point. But when we talk about us in America, understand that we are Americans too.
Mm.
And the pride that you have for that flag, we do too. But we understand that red is our blood. That blue is when we're bruised. That white is your purity, and those stars are the people hanging from trees. So we see the same thing y'all see. We here doing the same thing. But for some reason, it's like we're not American. I don't know.
Is it possible that we millennials, because I certainly don't identify with the flag in any kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Well, we aren't war children, right?
Right.
We aren't the children of freaking stone cold killers.
Right.
Like, imagine your father coming home from war and he don't say shit about the war, but you know he did some terrible shit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You don't ask questions.
Yeah. Just keep your mouth shut.
Thank you again, guys. We really appreciate it. As always, we like to ask that you like, subscribe, and share if you would like to.
Thanks for your support, guys. Just a reminder, we're reading the book. We're coming up in a couple weeks left, and we're really excited to share our thoughts about it with you guys, too. Thank you.
Thank you.